Watch this.
The number of days remaining in the race for Boise's mayor are dropping, which is why the campaign activity is picking up. Polls, ads, debates. Today, we try to touch them all.
And when we lose them to preventable crashes, our community loses something really important.
How do you address an increase in traffic fatalities? Well, I guess you start with a task force.
And how can you know that you saved 42 lives in the last 2 months when you made that statement?
Because I treated patients that benefited from their treatment.
Dr. Ryan Cole defends himself and his medical license in front of a commission in Washington. Does he still stand behind the things he said years ago? It is essentially a two-horse race for mayor in the city of Trees, current mayor Lauren McLean and retired Boise Police Chief Mike Masterson. 41 days out right now from decision day, and the race is turning a corner into the home stretch. So to maintain this equine metaphor, which candidate is going to the whip right now? Who's taken to the rail, or who may be fading in the final furlough? Joe Paris is following all of this. So Joe, the question is, what's new?
Well, we saw our first political advertisement on television of the mayoral race, and that's not something we always see, TV advertisements, but we've seen at least one, and it was a spot that was put out by the Boise Fact Check Political Action Committee. So based on the name, you may wonder who this group is. Is this a third-party fact-checking political action committee? Well, if you watch their first ad, you'll get the answer pretty quickly. This is a group that supports the current mayor, Lauren McLean, and their press release went out about 2 weeks ago. They had the statement, Boise Fact Check will set the record straight on McLean's housing record. So McLean is not a part of the Fact Check PAC, to be very clear. It's an unaffiliated group that does support her. So what does the new ad say? Well, basically, a local businessman, he says that he supports McLean. No real fact checks here. There's really no facts to check. This is his opinion, and I can't tell him if his opinion's wrong. And the ad claims that McLean is working across party lines to take on housing, a prominent topic in this race. So city politics are meant to be nonpartisan. So McLean and Masterson, for example, they're not running as Dems or Republicans, just a comment to make there. But we've seen some of your comments and questions about a story that we brought to you last week on polling in the Boise mayoral race. As we made clear that the Mike Masterson campaign, they paid to have that polling done, but we are circling back now to some of the questions that people were asked in the poll that led to the answers we shared with you. And we knew that the questions in the survey, at least a good chunk of them, they're likely framed to benefit Masterson, which only makes sense. They paid for the poll, and they likely want to test how their messaging is working. So I did get my hands on the actual questions. They've been sent to us from some viewers, and these are kind of the statements out there that were given to the people that really took the survey, the respondents. And these were presented as fact, but certainly not all of these are facts. Some of this is opinion injected into this. For one example, this statement says that McLean has made Boise less safe by mismanaging the police department, and that she installed a police chief who broke an employee's neck, and he only got fired because that incident was made public. And there's an implication here that officers are just quitting en masse. It also says that McLean accused the entire department there of racism in Boise. So it's a very complicated situation that was summarized in a few sentences. And first, it's not really the full narrative. For example, McLean never called the entire police department racist or accused them of that. She did speak about looking into what's going on in terms of racist behavior after a bombshell report here on KTVB about an officer giving racist speeches filled with white supremacist ideology. And so the community was asking her to look into it. She did have some concerns about the department. So anyways, it's fair to have an opinion on McLean and the police saga, but this little blurb that was given to voters is really not enough to educate someone before asking them, what they would like to vote for. So the McLean campaign shared a reaction with me to the questions and the messaging from the Masterson survey, and they said that the poll being touted by Mike Masterson's campaign is both cynical and misleading. The results, they say, are evidence of two key things. First, essentially, that she says that Boise voters don't think Masterson is the right choice, referring to the horse race part of the poll that had McLean leading 40% to 27%, with many undecided. And second, the McLean campaign says that there will likely be some dirty campaign campaigning from Masterson supporters in the coming weeks. So I actually reached out to the Masterson campaign this morning and this afternoon to also see if they would send me their list of questions. Wasn't sure if the sample we got was all of them or just a collection we wanted to see. No response from the Masterson campaign at this point, but we'll let you know if we hear one. And leading survey respondents in a direction, it's not new. It just shows how powerful negative messaging can be compared to positive, and that's something we can circle back to. But something else that we learned researching this, survey respondents tell us they don't live in Boise. We got a viewer message telling us about this, and you see the viewer message here. Basically, they said, hey, we were given this survey, and other people I know in my neighborhood, well, they got it too. And not only don't we not live in Boise, we don't live anywhere near there. We can't vote in that election. So I asked the Masterson campaign if they had concerns about their survey in terms of the demographic, in terms of the respondents. I did not get an answer back yet at this point. Again, for those wondering, I saw this question a lot. The parameters on the poll for the public policy polling, they surveyed 651 likely Boise voters. So when you say likely Boise voters, that could be part of the error there of some people getting it from outside the area. But September 15th and 16th of 2023, and I saw questions from you about the sample size. So 651, how big of a sample size is that of the voting population in Boise? Well, before the runoff in 2019, the first round of voting before they saw the final two, Boise saw 51,842 total votes. And if you want to draw from that, Brian, it's 1.3% of the pool. So 1.3%, you can do with that information with what you want. Also wanted to mention that we will be hosting a debate between the incumbent, Lauren McLean, and the challenger, former retired BPD chief Mike Masterson, in a few weeks, Brian, here October 24th, 6 p.m. on 7.
A lot of information there, Joe. A lot of good information. Thank you very much. Well, another West Bonner County School Board meeting appears to have been canceled for the same reason as last week. Trustee Troy Reinbold made it known he would not be attending tonight's meeting, which was rescheduled from last week after he failed to show up then. Lame Duck District Superintendent Brandon Durst posted this afternoon. I can confirm on Monday, Trustee Reinbold informed me he would not be available for a meeting today. Durst said he'd let Trustee Margaret Hall know about it, but later said we can still meet and we'll see if he shows up. That means they, once again, would not have enough trustees in attendance for a quorum should they decide to meet tonight. They need at least 3 of the 5, and since 2 were recalled last month, well, that just means all 3 have to show up to make it a quorum. So this obviously leaves West Bonner parents, teachers, and voters with a lot of questions. For example, this one that we always ask, state law requires regular monthly meetings of school board trustees on a designated day, on a predetermined week, like let's say the first Wednesday of each month or the third Thursday, that kind of stuff. So here we are in the middle of last week of September. There hasn't been a school board meeting in the West Bonner County School District since last month. The meeting scheduled for September 1st, canceled. Same for the one on September 6th because the recall election had yet to be certified. Last week's meeting, canceled as we mentioned, and here we are with this meeting scheduled for this week tonight at 6 o'clock. That would be Pacific time, 7 o'clock our time. What happens if they don't get a meeting in before Sunday, October 1st? Not sure. Can someone like the county sheriff compel Trustee Reinbold to show up? After all, he is an elected official, and these are a big part of his duties, being present for meetings so the board can conduct business. Well, we asked these questions of the Idaho School Board Association and Trustee Margaret Hall. We have yet to hear back from Trustee Hall, but the ISBA told us, well, they kind of have the same questions we do when it comes to this stuff. Quinn Perry telling us, I honestly can't say what would or wouldn't happen if they don't have a regular meeting. But again, it is preventing the board from carrying out its important business, like approving bills, payroll, contracts. Teachers, by the way, still working without a contract up in the West Bonner County School District. It would also be preventing from holding due process hearings on student discipline and employee issues. She also added, I also have no idea if someone could compel the missing trustee to attend. However, they can call in on the phone, or maybe they can Zoom in. That would count as them being there. It seems like that could be an option. But as she said, quote, we're operating in weird circumstances here. So I guess we'll just see what happens tonight. After all, Trustee Reinbold, he could call in, he could show up, because they have some big things to consider, like paying bills, as mentioned, declaring 2 board seats vacant so they can start the process to fill them, and of course the big ticket item, likely to decide if they want to accept Superintendent Durst's resignation immediately or have him remain in place for a bit. I guess, again, we'll kind of know in about an hour and a half or so. Dr. Ryan Cole continued the defense of his medical license in the state of Washington today. And on this day, day 3, it was his turn to testify. Dr. Cole, the Garden City pathologist, is facing charges. He made a lot of false and misleading statements related to the COVID-19 virus and the vaccine, referring to it as poison, clot shot, needle rape. Remember that? He's also accused of treating patients with COVID-19 or those wanting to avoid it in a manner that was beneath the standard of care, specifically prescribing people ivermectin over instant messaging on a website without knowing much about these people. Well, this morning, the Washington Medical Commission panel heard from a St. Luke's pulmonary specialist who testified during the late summer, early fall of 2021, he would see about 10 to 15 patients a day, many of them in the ICU. Well, Dr. Eric Skolton said more than half of those patients would not be vaccinated, and most of them would mention Dr. Cole, what he said in his speeches, and his promotion of ivermectin. When Washington's senior counsel asked Dr. Cole about it, she wanted to highlight things he had said repeatedly in public settings. For example, back on March 4th, 2021, when Dr. Cole first gave a presentation at the Idaho State House during an Idaho Freedom Foundation presentation of Capital Clarity. He was touting the benefits of anti-parasitic medicine that many use to deworm their animals.
Enter an effective prevention and treatment, ivermectin. 100% of the world trials have shown benefit. Decreases acquisition. Prophylactically, I've been on it for 2 months now.
Would it be your testimony under oath today that 100% of the world's ivermectin trials have shown benefit?
No. It's my testimony of the trials that I had reviewed at that time that were available in the ever-shifting and changing literature. That's what I had read to that point.
Ivermectin still has not been approved as a successful treatment for the coronavirus. Its efficacy remains unclear. And according to the FDA, that's according to the National Institutes of Health, that's according to the New England Journal of Medicine. Well, that wasn't the only thing Dr. Cole said, which was brought into question today.
I have seen a 10 to 20-fold increase of uterine cancer in the last 6 months in my laboratory. And I keep data year to year to year. In the last 6 months, when did we start the shots? January.
Is it your testimony under oath today that that statement was true?
It's not my testimony that that's true today. I went back and looked at the statistics, and it was at that point in time a fivefold.
There were several instances of that today, and there still has not been an established link between the COVID-19 vaccine causing cancer or even promoting it. This won't be the last we'll hear from Dr. Cole this week. His attorney is expected to call him in his own defense, and that will happen likely tomorrow. If you've been keeping track, it's been a historically high year for crashes involving cars versus people. Not just in Boise, but across the country. Locally, unfortunately, the outcome has been fatal for several people in our community. Cyclists, children, kids in high school. City of Boise has been looking for solutions to safely share the street, and one council member says he has the answer. Last night, Boise City Council announced the creation of the Traffic Fatality Review Task Force. A revolutionary or reactionary plan, I should say. But Andrew Bartline explains why the city says it will have long-term solutions.
It's a problem driven by numbers,
Yeah, it hit pretty close to home.
but intersecting with people.
This year, Boise has experienced the most pedestrian and bicycle-related fatalities in history.
Focused mostly on the names,
No matter if they're driving a car, riding a bike, or walking down the sidewalk.
including Federal Way,
James Kelly was killed. A driver didn't see him going across the crosswalk and turned in front of him.
Highway 55, and Beacon Light,
Rylan, he was on his way back from the mountain bike park.
16th, in Washington.
The long live Jaden Pin. So this was the kid that was hit on 16th Street. So his mom gave this one to me.
Jimmy Halliburton, he spent 16 years to make Boise bikeable.
It's hard to tell what hat I'm wearing when it comes to this conversation. Through the Boise Bicycle Project, we donate thousands of bicycles to kids every year. There's over 12,000 kids who are riding on BBP bicycles, and we certainly feel that sense of responsibility for their safety.
Both through his work at BBP and as the Boise City Council president, Jimmy's delivered a pitch in the interest of both.
I think we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we possibly could to make streets safer as soon as possible. And at this point, there really wasn't a specific mechanism where Ada County Highway Department, City of Boise, the Boise Police were all really working together to evaluate these things at the same time.
The solution? A traffic fatality review task force. Police, the highway district, and the city working collectively to ensure safe streets.
It meets quarterly to review any sort of incidents that have occurred, and it meets immediately every single time after a fatal crash has occurred.
Because the fatal crashes are too close.
Yeah, so the ghost bikes, they kind of give me chills. And there's a ghost skateboard where Jaden was hit, and it's a bicycle or a skateboard that's spray painted completely white, and it signifies that a rider was killed. But the reason it kind of gives me chills is I've put a few of them up.
A memorial for the name, not the number.
For any of the kids at Boise High School, they lost a classmate this year. For anybody who goes down to the downtown YMCA, they lost a member of the YMCA. For the folks that live in Eagle, they lost a kid out there that was on the mountain bike team. I mean, these are people in our community that add a lot of value, and they make Boise and the Treasure Valley a better place. And when we lose them to preventable crashes, our community loses something really important.
Jimmy says the value of bringing police, ACHD, and the city together for one team is because there's a variety of solutions that all need to work together to solve this problem. I'll say personally, after living in a few places, Southern Idaho has a strong running red lights culture. Jimmy agreed with that quickly. That's something the city would need police's help with. Jimmy says road design is another aspect. 35-mile-per-hour posted limit would be a good thing in some areas, but if it's a 3-lane road that's one way, well, it feels like you should probably be going 55 there. So bringing everyone together to discuss these issues when a crash happens, Jimmy hopes will create an immediate change in that area that would benefit similar situations elsewhere around the city too, Brian. Also, many different names Jimmy gave us when we talked with him earlier today. People this year specifically. Obviously, we couldn't go to every intersection where something has happened, so no intention to leave anybody out. There's a lot of them, more than we could get to today.
Amazing that he knows every single one of them.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. What else going on around the Treasure Valley today? Around the 2-8, I should say. More virus victims. We've got a virus task force and a virus vaccine clinic. Well, it is fall after all. Abby Davis has the 411.
Fall is here, and that means worrying about colds, flus, and COVID. One other thing to add to that list, measles. At least 4 more people are confirmed to have measles, and all of them are in Nampa. That's according to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and Southwest District Health. All 4 are unvaccinated children who were in the same household of the initial measles patient announced last week. If you've been exposed to measles, you should contact your doctor and monitor for symptoms for 21 days after exposure. Health and Welfare says the vaccination against the measles is highly protective.
And for people to take advantage of really the pain that so many Americans went through to line their pockets with ill-gotten gains and stolen taxpayer money is not only wrong and illegal, it's really offensive.
1 year ago, in the worst part of the pandemic, the U.S. Attorney for Idaho, Josh Hurwitz, announced the formation of Idaho's COVID Fraud Task Force. And a year later, the team of prosecutors and agencies found more than $7 million in fraud in Idaho from COVID relief programs, including the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. The task force has criminally charged 12 people and gotten civil judgments against 3. Hurwitz says the task force is just getting started. He expects there will be a similar number of indictments from the task force over the next year. In more virus news, there is a way to protect yourself against the flu, and it's happening this weekend. Several entities are teaming up to offer a bilingual drive-through vaccine clinic in Boise. It's this Saturday from 10 to 2 at the Consulate of Mexico's parking lot. Flu vaccines will be available at no cost, and insurance will be billed when applicable. Idaho State University pharmacy students and bilingual medical experts will be available to distribute the vaccines and answer questions. It's open to everyone 6 months and older. Plus, anyone who gets a flu shot will get a $25 gift card while supplies last. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
Our Idaho mountains often offer some beautiful views, and today is no exception with this view from Sun Valley. But what if I told you that this view might get a little bit better? Well, over the next week, we are expecting more of that fall foliage to start peaking, including areas in the Central Mountains. And in some spots, we are already starting to see those leaves fall. So if you're wondering, when's a good time for me to get out there and maybe start taking care of some of those? Well, my vote is not tonight, because we have some breezy conditions So that's just going to add more to the pile of your leaves. And tomorrow and Friday look like much better options. And Saturday, we do look to see some widespread precipitation. So maybe not Saturday either. I give you permission to put it off if you are trying to plan that for Saturday. We are expecting some cooler conditions as we look for tomorrow and the next few days in the mornings. So you can see in the mountains, that means some of those lows will be in the 20s. But for our area in Boise, we're expecting to warm up a little bit as we go into Friday. So tomorrow's going to be a little bit cooler for us, but then as we go into the weekend, we expect some cooler temperatures and a little bit of some chilly rain chances for that weekend time frame.
Let's get right to your comments. We got about a minute to go on this show on Wednesday. JM wants to know, the Idaho Medical Board just ignored the complaints filed by Idaho physicians about Dr. Cole's false claims and information. Shameful. Well, actually, we don't know if that's what happened because we tried to look into this before and we were told this. The Board of Medicine is statutorily prohibited from providing any information related to complaints or informal outcomes of complaints or investigations. They don't have to say anything, even let you know if they're investigating anything. That's how that works. Why don't you invite Dr. Cole on to hear his side of these allegations? We have, for the last couple of years, have had no response whatsoever. But we're hearing some of that during the last couple of days when it comes to his testimony, at least. So we'll share with that as much as possible. What good is it having a state board of education if they can't step in situations like the one in West Bonner County? If they have no power, why have a board? Well, how can you have local control if the state steps in every time? We'll see you tomorrow.